Everybody, thank you for being with us for this final, we call press conference or presentation. You may call it as you like. It's a pleasure to have you here. I mean, I think to get together with Ralph Rugoff and the whole Biennale and the curators of the Biennale, I think we would like to dedicate this day to Okwi Anvezo and his memory. I mean, in my life, I have met a few people like Okwi, so profound, so a person so intense, so generous, and so sophisticated from the intellectual point of view. And he has been a curator of the 2015 Biennale, and it will be, of course, part of our history. And as personally, I remember him as a really valuable, great friend, if I may say so. And so we dedicate this day to him. Welcome to this meeting. We have reached a few numbers already. I mean, let's say there are 5,235 journalists accredited, of which 3,242 from a press from abroad. The national participation are finally 90 or 79. Haiti, unfortunately, did withdraw, will not be there, whereas Venezuela, they will be here on the 13th, and they, of course, they are most welcome. You have 4 new participating countries, which is Ghana, Madagascar, Malaysia, and Pakistan. We have 2 special projects. One is the Forte Marghera special project with the artist Ludovica Carbotta. The second is the Applied Arts Pavilion, which derives from a collaboration between the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Biennale. The title is It's About Time, and it's has been curated and realized by Marisia Lewandowska. Opening May the 9th at 4 p.m. You will have in the papers you have in front of you, possibly you have the whole list of meeting on art, the program of conversations, performances, and talks that are part of the exhibition. I take the opportunity to thank all our main sponsor, first of all, our partner, which is Swatch. And later on, I'll invite the representative of Swatch to join us on this floor. Main sponsor Illy, then JTI, Artemide, Vela Venezia Unica, Seguso, Vetri Arti, and clearly Gottlieb, Steen, and Hamilton. Of course, our thanks to the Ministry of Culture, to the City of Venice, to the Regione Veneto, to the local Sovrintendenza Archeologia e Belle Arti. A special thank to the students of the Academy delle Belle Arti di Venezia for the help they have given us. Thanks to the donors. And of course, thanks a lot to Ralph Rugoff, but this can be assumed as given. So we are at the 58th exhibition. For me, it's my 20th anniversary of my first exhibition of art. And as I say in the papers that has been circulating, I mean, for me, they have all been interesting times. I mean, I give to this word 2 possible meanings. One is the idea of menacing times. The other idea is simply that times are complex, and it's a hymn to complexity. And I'm sure I fully agree that the world of art and an art of exhibition should be always inspired by an attitude to underline the complexity of the condition of human beings and life, and to represent always a challenge to all oversimplifying attitudes that possibly are in these times so frequent. I would like to thank all the pavilions of participating countries for their engagement, and in all these years I've seen and I witnessed a crescendo in the quality of the pavilions, in the quality of the way things are organized institutionally. A lot of new countries have joined us in the last 20 years, almost 50, more than 30 countries. And the spirit that has inspired their presence and their participation is the right spirit. And the idea is, of course, that each of them brings a contribution to a pluralism of voices. And that pluralism of voices, which is typical of a Biennale and is the aim of having a Biennale based on different pavilions or on different curators. So they are more or less all adopting our model of organizations in the sense that they all appoint a curator. And the model that we have adopted in 1999 was the model that we call Aperto, which means an exhibition, international exhibition with one curator responsible for the choices, one curator which gives us his own fertile, partial view of the world of art, with no pretension of being exhaustive in terms of the representation of the world of art, but with a choice that is in front of a visitor as a challenge, as a stimulus, as an opportunity of dialogue. I've dedicated my introduction. The title of my introduction is "The Visitor as a Partner," and as a matter of fact, it has become a partner also in the very simple interpretation of it, because it's a partner from the point of view of the economics of the Biennale, and this makes us much better than before. But it's a partner in the sense that really the purpose of the Biennale is just to offer a challenge to the visitor, offer an opportunity to the visitor. The space between art and artist and the public or the visitors is crowded. There are many in between, from those who write, from those who sell, from those who buy, from those who collect, from those who represent, from Kunsthallen, from critics, from books. So it's a crowded world, and in this world there are also many biennales, and we have to find out always what is our role, what is our specific role. And I think that we have tried to identify clearly and to maintain through times this specific role, which is establish a direct link between visitors and the work of art, a direct dialogue with the presenting the works of art as if they were in their birthday, in their giorno di nascita. There has been many titles of these biennales, but may I recall one of these, since I have in front of me Bice Kuriger. I may remind the title of Bice Kuriger's exhibition was Illuminations, and more or less the subtitle of all these biennales has been for all these years Illuminations. And this again is, and to have been faithful to this model, to this inspiring idea of our mission, I think that, I'm glad to say that it brought results, and the visitors did grow from 180,000 at the beginning to 614. The last Art Biennale, the visitor as a partner has responded, the visitor has come, and the visitor is really the sole preoccupation we have in our work, and the main inspiring idea for our to give to our mission a positive and specific character. The idea that the question is the relationship between the main question is the relationship between the visitor and the viewer and the work of art. We've been sharing that since the beginning, since we met the first day, and so I'm glad to say that this is something that is shared by the curator, and this may help in make this exhibition even more important in the history of the Biennale. So there are many reasons why we are grateful to Ralph, but this in particular I underline as a reason for our gratitude and for the great work he has been doing. Of course, together with him, my warm thanks goes to the whole Biennale and all the people that has been working. A lot of people, a lot of energy, capability of making a miracle every year. And so, I mean, to them, my final thought, and to you, my thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo. Are there any questions?
Oh, I thought you were speaking.
Well, I thought if we had some questions, we could get them out of the way first. But I've been speaking so much about this exhibition recently that I'm looking for something new to say. And I'm also still grappling with the experience of actually seeing it for the first time. It's a funny thing happens when you work on an exhibition like this. As soon as you install one work, it gets covered in plastic and paper, and you can't see it anymore. And the experience of going through an exhibition is quite different from imagining it in your head and planning it on paper. To go and experience this sequence of images and sounds and materials and textures and this kind of, what we aimed for, especially in this building, a kind of symphony of different scales, because we have very small objects, we have very large objects, and we tried to play with the space of this amazing building, the Arsenale, because it's very important, I think, that art takes on and responds to the space that it's in. Art never exists in a vacuum, and it takes on different characters from the space that it's presented in. And to some extent, it's the two very different characters of this building and the central pavilion of the Giardini that influenced my thinking about having two separate exhibitions as part of this Biennale, Proposition A and Proposition B. And I chose this word proposition because I think an exhibition should propose something. It should propose a way of looking, a way of thinking about the art. It could make an argument. But there should be some sense that there's something at stake with that exhibition. There's something that you're putting, an idea that you're putting out there that might be a risky proposition, but you're offering something for the viewer to mull over. This idea of having two exhibitions, but with the same artists in both exhibitions, but in each case showing very different works, grew out of a desire to highlight the multiplicity of artistic practice and to really allow people to experience different sides of an artist's practice. So from the very beginning, I knew I wanted to have fewer artists than usual, but to be able to show more of their work. And in having this A and B format, it took that a little bit further, and it really became a way of focusing on different things that artists do. I like to think of biennales as a kind of having a very specific temporality. They happen every 2 years. And this is why I focused on living artists, because I really like this notion that a biennale is a time to pause and reflect and think about the art that's been made in those last 2 years and how that art relates to the world we're all living in, which is changing quite rapidly. And looking at this span of time, one of the things that struck me the most is the way public discourse has become so polarized in so many countries, where people who have different opinions about things seem to live in parallel universes. They can't speak to each other, they don't have the same language, they don't seem to be able to refer to the same facts. And of course, you have mediums like Twitter, which somehow ended up becoming a medium for news, where you have a very reduced bandwidth in which communication can take place. So I was struck by the fact that we were having this narrowing of public exchange in the forums in which it can occur. And what I think is most valuable about art is that it's a place where a very different kind of nuanced, ambiguous, multi-leveled and multi-dimensional type of communication is not really the right word, but where you can encounter a kind of an experience that leads you to think about how things might mean, to make new associations, to make new connections between things. It's the 500th anniversary of Leonardo's death, and there's a wonderful piece in this Biennale by Hito Sterl looking at Leonardo's decision not to release his plans for a submarine to the Venetian Navy based on ethical grounds, because he thought it would be used to unleash unparalleled destruction. One of the things Leonardo said that was an inspiration to me is this idea that everything is connected to everything else. He said, if you want to be an artist, observe the world and see how everything is connected to everything else. And I think this is the great value that artists give us. They connect things that the rest of us don't see. We don't see the connections between things in the same way an artist does, and they call our attention to different ways of mapping the world we live in by threading together different ideas, different experiences, even making us confront different constellations of emotions. This morning I was talking to a journalist who was doing a piece on one of the painters in this exhibition, and he said this painting seems to evoke feelings of elation, anxiety, rage, urgency all at once. And I thought that was a very good description of this work by Michael Armitage. And I think art forces us to look at how our experience is often multidimensional, layered. We have names for feelings. We can distinguish this feeling from that feeling, but we often experience them simultaneously. You know, and I think one of the great challenges that contemporary art puts for us is artists are often asking us to hold two different ideas in our head at the same time, or two different images, two different feelings, and to really grapple with the tension between them. So there's no simple truth. There's no single story. It's really the place in our culture where we can experience the complexity of what it is to be human. So it seemed that having this double format was a very good way to call attention to this character of art, which I think is more important than ever. And Paolo Baratta mentioned the importance of having a plurality of voices for the Biennale, and I think that's been a concern of mine all along, but also to shine a light on how each voice is a plurality, and to hopefully find a way for visitors to experience that by first encountering an artist's work in one venue, and then going to the other venue and experiencing a show that has quite a different character, but revisiting those same artists and having a second chance to understand their work, and to understand it in light of the work they've already seen. So I think that offers the possibility of having a very different type of understanding. There is no theme per se in this Biennale, but there are what I would call leitmotifs. There are motifs that recur in a number of different works, and some of these include subjects having to do with walls, barriers, divisions of one kind or another. They have to do with doppelgangers, mirror worlds, masks, and the idea of having a hidden history or a hidden identity. There's also something I wasn't even aware of when I was working on this, a whole section that's really dealing with science and technology, from eco-sciences to machines, and that relationship between human and machine, which seems to be growing ever thinner. And my great hope for the exhibition really is that people feel that when they come and experience these works, that they feel the sense that their own contribution is as important as what the artist has done, that people bring different things depending on your own personal history and interest when you encounter a work of art. And this is why there's so many different opinions. And why this exhibition, I'm sure, will generate many conflicting opinions. But to me, this is a very positive thing. And it's important to realize that it's work to encounter a work of art, but it can be very pleasurable and thrilling work. And this is why I'm delighted that in the Central Pavilion, we have this wonderful work by Laura Favoretto, Thinking Head, on the roof. And that is a cloud of steam that's rising off the roof of the Central Pavilion, as if all the thought power of the visitors inside is creating this cloud of thought. Sometimes that cloud of thought comes down over the building's facade. It dissolves that institutional appearance of the building, and it becomes something much softer looking. Sometimes it even goes into the gallery and worries the artists whose works are on paper. But I think it's a marvelous piece, and it's a piece that includes two other elements. One element is a series of secret talks that will be occurring in a bunker in the Giardini dei Vergini between different thinkers, each talk centered around one of 50 words that the artist has chosen that she thinks is particularly relevant to this time. Those talks will be live streamed. And then the artist has chosen groups of objects that she associates with each of these 50 words. And I think this kind of very multidimensional, complex artwork is really kind of epitomizing the approach that I hope this Biennale will represent. So that's all I'm going to say.
Before questions, may I invite Mr. Giordanetti, which is artistic advisor of Swatch International, to join us. Thank you very much, and thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Baratta, and thank you very much, Ralph. For Swatch, it's an honor to be for the 5th time the partner of Biennale, and of course to be presenting some of, let's say, the elements of our commitment and support to the arts on a larger scale. The title we gave to Swatch participation is Swatch Faces, because we believe that it's interesting also to get to know the artists and not only their work. Under this umbrella, which has been a consistent element actually since the Biennale 2015, where Oqui suggested that we had like an umbrella title for the president. So it's a wonderful opportunity to remember him once again. We present in Giardini the work of a British artist called Joe Chilsen, who is, let's say, making a tribute to his story with Venice. Joe is a Venetian, let's say, by adoption since many, many years, and has been embracing a very analog form of art, almost as a juxtaposition to the world going very digital. So everything is done as very textured and very rich in the technique that you can understand he's using. And this is kind of the centerpiece of the presence in Giardini in front of the main lawn, which is also this year very interactive in terms of very mobile and therefore very playful. In Arsenale, we have the chance to present the work of 4 artists who have been residents of the Swatch Art Piece Hotel. It's a project which is now 8 years old in Shanghai, right on the Bund, and it was basically the physical realization of a dream, of a vision of the chairman of Swatch to offer a space to artists to express themselves in freedom in a relatively unique environment. And this year we have selected 4 artists, one from Spain, from Korea, from China, and from the US, to be with us in the Sale d'Armi at Arsenale. And this is what makes let's say, as you were saying before, there are many biennales, and this would be the little part of the biennale with the eyes of Swatch. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, any question, comment? C'è un microfono che gira? Ecco, là.
Thank you. Between the 2 different venues, you say that you have the same artist represented very often at both of them. So how did you choose which exhibition by that particular artist to be in either place?
How did I choose which works? Sometimes it had to do with which works seemed to function better in a particular building. It might have to do with the scale of the work, or whether it needed a cleaner environment, which you can find in the central pavilion, or whether it could survive in a noisier environment visually. Then certain groups of work just started to emerge as feeling like they belong together, and that also was part of this process. But it wasn't done with a formula. It was really done through a kind of organic process of winnowing and looking at what would work where alongside of other works.
Can you explain why did you feel the need to introduce the performance program, and if it is really the first time that he is linked with the international exhibition, and how did you choose the artists?
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
If you can explain the need that the introduction of the performance program, and if it's really the first time that it's linked to the international exhibition, and at last, how did you choose the artists?
Yeah. I'm probably not the right person to know whether it's the first time it's ever been linked to the international exhibition. I find that hard to believe, right? It's happened before. Yeah, yeah.
Even a Golden Lion was a performance.
All right. So that's the first part of your question. How did I choose the artists? You know, in general, in this Biennale, I was looking for artists whose work seemed to exist or straddle between categories, genres, conventions, because I do think the most interesting art sits in between our usual categories and as a result challenges them. So I was looking for performance work that did something similar. And so it might be performers who were working in between some kind of choreographic performance, but also something musical, something with spoken word, but people who were breaking down some kind of genre or convention with their work.
I'm Phoenix TV from China. My question is, as we all know, the title you proposed for this Biennale refers to an ancient Chinese proverb. But my question is, do you believe we live in a time of global conflict? If so, in what way do your selection for artists and work relate to it?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
Okay, I just repeat it. As we all know, the title you proposed for this 58th edition of the Venice Biennale, May You Live in Interesting Times, refers to an ancient Chinese proverb. My question is, do you believe we live in a time of global conflict? And if so, in what way do your selection of artists and work relate to it?
Thank you. Well, the title interested me for several reasons. One is that it's a title that many people in the West believed to be an ancient Chinese proverb. And for 80 years, well-known writers and politicians referred to this proverb in speeches and in books. And we now know that it was not an ancient Chinese proverb. This was a fabrication probably made by a British diplomat. The fact that this term, this fake proverb, was first appeared in print in a speech in which a member of parliament in the UK was warning against the rise of fascism in Europe in 1936, also seemed of interest to me, given where we are today politically. I was also interested in the idea, though, that some of how fake news is nothing new, but that this proverb, which was a complete counterfeit, had somehow entered history and many famous political speeches as if this was a piece of real cultural history. So it seemed to me an example of how the lines that we draw between what's fictional and what's not aren't always so clear-cut. In terms of the kinds of work that I was looking for artists whose work could look at multiple levels of a story or of a situation rather than a single story, and to question how we normally might read or interpret an object or an image. And I think that kind of open, slightly skeptical, but explorative thinking is very important in times like these.
Well, I mean, the true curse would be, may you live in boring times, don't you?
Well, you know...
it might happen.
Yes, but I think boring times would have been considered stable, peaceful, prosperous times. But when someone says to me, may you live in interesting times, I always say thank you.
Yes. Yes. Luckily so. Okay. Shall we go and visit the exhibition? Thank you very much for your presence. See you soon. Thank you.